Hey everyone, welcome to Massachusetts Sports Central. This is our NFL Power Rankings after week one of the season. It is important to remind everyone that what these rankings are. This list represents how likely we think that each team will win Super Bowl 52. It is not an ordered list of the best teams necessarily. It also isn't a random list based on who beat who last week. Be prepared for many 0-1 teams to being ahead of a lot of 1-0 teams. Also, some teams that beat another team will still be ranked behind them. So, spoiler alert, New York. New England is ahead of KC still. While a great win for KC, I still think New England is more likely to win the Super Bowl. Now, say late in the season they're both 11-2, then I'd probably have KC ahead since they would have the tiebreaker and would have a great chance of having the Pats play them in Arrowhead, which would be a big advantage. But right now, it isn't that huge of a deal. So basically, this list is a lot less reactionary than many of these types of power rankings you see. All right. Okay, so on to the rankings. Number 32, the New York Jets staying in place. Jets are still a terrible team. Nothing they did this week makes me think that they are not a terrible team. Now, I will say that they did hang in for a little while, but also they were playing the Bills, who are not going to be a particularly good team, and the Bills were able to pull away in the end. So really, until the Jets show me something, they're going to be locked into this last place. Number 31, the Colts, falling 6 places from last week. This is actually tied for the biggest change of any team on the rankings. I already thought the Colts were going to be bad even with Luck. I thought they were going to be worse without him. And then I certainly underrated exactly how bad Scott Tolzien is. And now they have confirmed that Luck is not playing in week 2. So pretty good chance they're going to be losing at least one more game until he comes back. And as I said, the defense looked pretty bad, and the rest of the offense looked pretty bad around Tolzien. So I don't think just getting Luck back will change it. It might make it so they're not a prohibitive favorite to lose every game that they play, but they're still not going to be good. So at least until we know when Luck is going to come back, they're going to be pretty low in this list. Number 30, the San Francisco 49ers falling one spot. Obviously, I didn't think the 49ers were going to be pretty good. They did not play well against the Panthers team that I'm not particularly high on. So they could have potentially, in other circumstances, they certainly could have been last or second to last, but the Jets and Colts are both so bad that the 49ers will have a hard time cracking the bottom too, for unless they really step up. Number 29, the Cincinnati Bengals. Another team that I was not high on, and I have them falling 3 spots. I actually had the Rams right near the bottom of this, as we'll talk about in a minute or two when we get to them. I'm sorry, wrong game. The Ravens. So the Bengals got destroyed by the Ravens 20-0. Mentioning the Rams, I meant to say that during the Colts, so that they got destroyed by a team that I had ranked at the very bottom. The Bengals got destroyed by the Ravens. I don't think the Ravens are a great team, but they are at least a decent team, and they do have a fairly good defense. Bengals got shut out 20-0. They had a bunch of turnovers. Nothing seemed to really be going right. It's kind of how I feel that the rest of the season is going to go for them. They won't be that bad in every game, but I don't expect much from this team. And getting destroyed the way that they did fall 3 places to number 29. Number 28, the Chicago Bears. They actually moved up 3 slots, even though that they lost their game. But they were actually very competitive with the Falcons, which is pretty surprising. The Falcons, they will fall a little bit when we get to them, but they were right near the top of my list before. So having a team that I didn't think was going to be very good, even hanging with them for most of the game, certainly, a little tip of the cap to the Bears there. Plus, since some of those other teams that had been ahead of them played so bad, and I had so low expectations for those teams anyway, you're gonna say the Bears were able to move up. Just as an aside, you're going to see more bouncing around at the bottom of the list since these teams are kind of bad. So these kind of week-to-week, little changes with how well they play. is going to be a bigger deal than, like, say, at the top of the list where, a good team could have a bad day, but if there's no particular reason to think that they're on a decline or super high trajectory upward, they're not going to move quite as much. All right, number 27, the Cleveland Browns. Another team that lost but actually moved up one slot. Similar story to what we had with the Bears. They lost their game to the Steelers, who I had as number 2 last week. But it was very close, and they didn't play badly. Obviously, you need to win some games at some point, but they hung tough with a really good team. So there is definitely potential for them to pick up some wins against lesser teams if they can play that well. Like I said, moving up one spot. Number 26, the LA Rams. So I was very low on the Rams, and frankly, I'm not changing my tune completely. But, they certainly earned moving up, even though they beat a god-awful Colts team. But they beat them, and they beat them badly. And they beat them on both sides of the ball badly. And they did not have Aaron Donald, who is the best player on that team. So, they did. I mean, number 26. They're not. I don't see them anywhere near being a playoff contender at this point. They just might not be as bad as the Colts and the 49ers and such as I originally had them. Goff had a very good game, by far the best game of his career up to this point. Again, it was against a terrible team, so let's see if that holds up. But if that was a glimmer of what he's capable of, and he plays somewhat near this level going forward, this team, like I said, I don't think they're going to be a really good team, but I believe I had them winning 2 games. They very well could be more like a 6, maybe even a 7-win team in a weak division. Moving on, number 25, the Buffalo Bills. I have them falling one spot despite the fact that they won. Again, we already talked about their opponent, the Jets. So, frankly, they moved down a little bit because even though they won the game, they should have won that game. They let a really bad team hang with them for 3 quarters, and didn't win by a big margin. They didn't look bad in the game, but they didn't look great. So, like I said, just a little jockeying at the bottom. Not too much else to say there. Number 24, the Arizona Cardinals. They're moving down 5 slots. This has less to do with the fact that they lost their game. They lost to the Lions, who I have quite a bit higher on this list. They did blow a lead, so that's a knock against them. Palmer looked really, really bad. I don't think he's as bad as he showed there, though it does, give me pause to how his season is going to go overall. I suspected he would have our time being good and healthy, one or the other, or neither. Yesterday he was certainly bad. He didn't get hurt. Let's see if he can stay healthy and if he can improve a little bit. But the biggest news is David Johnson broke his wrist, or I think he broke his wrist, sprained it, did something to his wrist during the game, and was confirmed that he is going to have surgery and is going to miss like half the season. So he is easily the best player that they have on offense. That means currently. Not saying he's a better overall player for his life than Larry Fitzgerald, but a young dynamic David Johnson right now is better than an old but still quite good Larry Fitzgerald. But now Larry Fitzgerald literally is the best player on the offense on that team. So that is that's a problem for them. So the defense is good. It's not great, but it's very good. It will keep them in a lot of games, but now I don't see them being able to outscore people. I already did not have high expectations for this team, but now they're actually pretty low. If they can play okay while Johnson's gone and then he comes back, then they might be able to do something. I still don't see them really being that close to the playoffs, but we'll see. Number 23, the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is another team I was not high on, but they beat down the Texans, who I actually have ranked quite a bit higher than them. So that was an impressive win against a better team. So unlike some of these other teams that had impressive wins, they actually beat a really good team in the process as well, or what could be a very good team. So the defense for the Jags definitely gelled. I believe they had 10 sacks. Calais Campbell, new to the team, set the franchise sack record for a game with 3.5 himself. They had defensive scores, so the defense really clicked. Hard to expect them to play that well every week. And they're not going to get to play like a deer in headlights Tom Savage, or coming off the bench for his first real NFL action ever, Deshaun Watson, every week. So I don't expect the defense to play that well, but I do feel that they have the potential to gel better than I was expecting them to before the season actually started. The offense, though, didn't have to do much and didn't do all that much. Bortles didn't, basically, he didn't throw that much, so he didn't have a chance to really torpedo the game. Maybe he would have been fine, or maybe he could have gotten exposed if he actually had to throw the ball because they weren't up so big. So I'm not sold on the Jags, but they certainly earned moving up above some of these other fairly bad teams, at least in the short term. Number 22, the New Orleans Saints. Same spot I had them last week. The offense had a hard time early against the Vikings. They were able to rally later in the game to get some yards and some scores, but by then the game was mostly out of hand, so mostly could be considered garbage time numbers. The defense stunk. The Vikings destroyed them. It's just no other way to really put it. Sam Bradford had a great game. He probably rivaled Alex Smith with the guy who's not that bad, who highly exceeded expectations by playing awesome in week 1 at quarterback. Those two are duking it out right there. I do think the Saints are still going to be mostly mediocre this year. I had them at 7 wins. Maybe they can scratch out 9. I don't see anything better than that. I could certainly see them winning less games than that as well. So right now they're stick and put at number 22. Number 21, the Washington Redskins. I actually have them moving up 2 slots despite the fact that they lost and didn't look that great in losing to Philadelphia. That has much more to do with some other teams moving down as opposed to them looking so great and moving up. It's just hard to say. The defense didn't look good, didn't look horrible. The offense didn't look good, didn't look horrible. Cousins had some bad plays. I do think that they're going to shake it off and will probably be better. But again, I only have this as a 6-win team, so I don't have particularly high expectations. I don't think they're going to move down dramatically on this list throughout the year, just because I think some of these other teams are just far worse. Number 20, the Carolina Panthers. That is up 1 slot from last week. So they did look pretty good. They beat the 49ers, who are a very bad team, and they beat them very convincingly. That's for sure. Defense looked quite good, but against a fairly bad 49er offense. The offense, wasn't anything special. Newton didn't do anything too terrible, but they weren't anything impressive either. So I'm not really sold on the Panthers based, mostly on a beatdown of the 49ers. Number 19, the LA Chargers. Chargers moving down 1 slot. They lost on Monday night to the Broncos in Denver. So, that was a game that I would expect them to lose. And actually, they were losing fairly badly, but then Rivers was actually able to rally them and get close in the 4th before they had the game-tying field goal blocked at the end of regulation. And so the Broncos ended up winning that game when it looked like it was probably going to go to overtime. Again, I'm not sold on the Chargers. I don't think they're not one of the worst teams in the league, but I don't think they're at best a bubble playoff contender, and even that I think is a stretch. All right, number 18, the Baltimore Ravens, moving up 2 slots. they did look quite good in killing the Bengals. The defense, especially, they had like 4 turnovers. I think they picked off Dalton like 3 times in the first half. So they definitely looked pretty good, but I have the Bengals at the very bottom of this list because I just don't. I think they're a terrible team, and they certainly played that way in Week 1. But the Ravens, they did win, and some of the other teams around them did not play well, so they moved up 2 slots. Number 17, the Miami Dolphins. I hate to move teams that don't play around very much. But I did move them down 2 slots. Again, this had more to do with some of the teams that I had right behind them being impressive, so I wanted to move them up. Obviously, the Dolphins didn't play, so we'll see what happens this week. Number 16, the Detroit Lions, one of the aforementioned teams that played quite well, so I wanted to move them up. Only 1 slot. They did beat the Cardinals, who again, I don't have ranked particularly high, but they weren't one of the worst teams like some of the other things that we've talked about. They also had a comeback, so that's always nice. That's kind of like Stafford's thing. Stafford played really well. And the Cardinals' defense is actually pretty solid. So the fact that they were able to put up a lot of points, and Stafford I believe he had 4 touchdowns, is a big deal because they were playing a decent team there. Number 15, the Philadelphia Eagles. They beat the Redskins. They beat them fairly convincingly. The defense looked extremely good. The offense looked, I was going to say solid, probably more than solid. I don't think they impressed as much as the defense, but they definitely played well. I still have them as a fringe playoff team. I had them with a winning record, but in 3rd place in a pretty tight division. So they certainly could move up and get into the playoffs. Right now I have them a little bit out. Number 14, the Denver Broncos. As mentioned a couple minutes ago with the Chargers, they won their game on Monday night. They beat the Chargers. They were out to a pretty good lead, but let the Chargers crawl back into it. But in the end, they won. As I mentioned last week, one of the reasons the Broncos are higher than some other teams who I actually think overall are probably better than them is that they do have that dominating defense, and they look pretty dominating at times against the Chargers still. So, especially at home, I think they're still going to be a tough win even for teams that are clearly better than them overall. But having that elite defense, I think, makes them more dangerous than some of the other teams that, like I said, might be more well-rounded and overall better than them. Like if you kind of looked at if you compared, position by position or, position groups and stuff like that, a lot of the teams that are ranked a couple spots below them are probably better, but none of them have the dominating defense that they do. So that just always makes them a little dangerous. Number 13, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Similar to the Dolphins, I didn't really want to move them since they didn't play. I did only move them down 1 slot. Again, has a little bit more to do with some of the teams behind them getting to move up. So obviously they didn't play, so not too much to say about that. Number 12, the Tennessee Titans. Had them move down 1 slot. They lost their game. They lost to the Raiders, who, I have pretty high on the list, and I expected them to lose that game. So that wasn't too shocking. They didn't look that good at times. The defense wasn't terrible, wasn't great. Mariota was able to rush in a touchdown, but he didn't impress that much in the passing game. DeMarco Murray couldn't get anything going, and since the Raiders are a good team, but that's mostly because they have a very good offense. We'll see if the Raiders really did improve this much on defense or if there's some real problems with the Titans' offense. At this point, I'm not going to overreact and move them down too much, but it was, again, some of the teams behind them before played, a little bit better, and I was a little worried about that, so moving them down 1 slot. Number 11, the New York Giants. That is a 4-point fall from last week. They looked terrible in their game against Dallas. Zeke was playing, and he was able to run on them relatively easy, even though the defense actually didn't play that bad. actually, for the most part, they played pretty good. It just at some point when the offense couldn't get anything going, they were on the field a lot, and the Cowboys have a good offense, so they were eventually able to get some points. But I mean, they still didn't give up that many. The offense, though, I was not sold on the Giants' offense to start with, and then without Beckham, it was like they have nothing. Eli's not that good of a quarterback. He's never been great, but now he's getting old, and he's not that good. We'll see if he can bounce back. He did have a good 2015. He did not have a good 2016. The line is shaky at best. They don't have much of a running game, and without Beckham, they don't have much in the way of receivers. Even Brandon Marshall, the big guy they brought in over the off season to like really bolster like the weapons and stuff. He only had one catch, and that was like I believe like the last catch of the entire game for the Giants. So by that point, the game was over. So no impact, like literally no impact at all. The Giants' offense has got to scare people. I could actually see them falling down this list pretty fast if they can't figure something out, or if Odell misses any significant amount of time. Have not heard anything about his Week 2 status yet. But this was actually kind of reminded me a little bit of the playoff game last year, because in reality, they actually were outplaying the Packers in that game. At least on the defensive side, the defense was totally shutting down Rodgers and the offense for the Packers. But then, even though Green Bay had a bad defense at that point, they couldn't get anything going on offense, so they kept giving the ball back quickly. And eventually, there's only so many times you can go to the well against a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and then they were able to kill him. Kind of the same thing with the Cowboys. They were able to hold them early. Get the offense the ball, but like they couldn't do anything with it, so they just kept giving Dak and Dez and Zeke and that amazing offensive line like chance after chance after chance, and eventually there's only so much the D can do. If that is going to be a consistent pattern for them, as good as the D is, they're just going to lose a lot of games. So there's some question marks in New York with them. Number 10, the Houston Texans. Most other lists I've seen have dropped them significantly more than this, I think overreacting to that Jags game. But the quarterback situation in Texas got to get fixed, because if they have Savage play like that, and frankly, Watson, for all the hype for that first drive when he came in, he didn't play any better than Savage overall. He just had one decent drive and was able to actually get a score. So I have the Texans moving down 2 slots. Like I said, if they can't solve this quarterback problem, they could start dropping like a rock over the next couple of weeks. If they can get competent quarterback play from Watson moving forward, they could easily start moving back, well into the top 10 again. Number 9, the Minnesota Vikings. Had them at 13 last week, so they moved up 4 slots, breaking into the top 10. We all knew the defense was going to be pretty good, and they certainly looked that way against a Saints team that's known for scoring very well. The offense looked great, but that was against the Saints defense, so I'm not sold on that completely. But certainly, if nothing else, it did show the potential that Bradford can, actually air it out and put up some big numbers. Even if it is only on a bad defense, he's showed he was capable of doing it, because other teams play bad defenses and they do not put up the kind of numbers that he did that night. So if the defense can stay healthy and good, and the offense can be decent, like I said, it doesn't have to play as well as it did on Monday to be viable. But that's sort of why I've moved them up a little bit, and I could definitely see them being a real force if the offense is for real. Number 8, the Seattle Seahawks, moving down 4 slots. I actually picked the Packers to win that game against them, so that wasn't shocking to me. I was impressed with their defense for most of the game. Obviously, kind of how I was saying in talking about the Packers-Giants playoff game from last year. If you can only expect so much from the defense if the offense just keeps giving the ball back to a guy like Rodgers with decent weapons and stuff, like there's only so much you can expect the defense to hold up against. And that was clearly the case here, because the the Seahawks completely shut him down in the first half. And but the offense just could not do anything. They couldn't run, they couldn't pass. The line was horrendous. So that is going to be a concern moving forward, especially because I do think Green Bay's defense should be better this year, but it's not like they were playing the Broncos or the Giants or the Texans or like another team that's supposed to have like an elite level defense. So I do think that performance by Green Bay has as much to do with a bad Seahawks offense as it does with, a newfound super duper defense on the Green Bay side. So Seahawks are still a good team with that amazing defense, but they definitely have to solve some of those offensive issues or they're going to lose a lot of low-scoring games this year. Number 7, the Kansas City Chiefs. That's up 2 slots. I would have moved them up higher based on that beatdown that they gave to New England in Foxborough. That was an impressive game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not going to anoint Kareem Hunt like the greatest running back of all time after that game, but he played amazingly. If he can keep that up, then they have a real find there. Alex Smith had one of probably the 3 or 4 best games of his entire career. Again, was that him just playing well and is going to have a great season, or did he just pull it out of his butt and we'll go back to being more of the good but not amazing quarterback we're used to from Alex Smith? Defense was good, but they lost Eric Berry for the year with a ruptured Achilles. I don't think that's like a loss that they can't overcome, but it is definitely a big loss because he is one of the best safeties in the league and one of the more important parts on that team. So losing him is definitely a big deal. Like I said, I might have moved them up a couple slots more, but now I'm kind of leery of if they're going to be able to play as well against a strong offenses like the Raiders that they're going to have to play twice in their own division later on. So, but like I said, number 7, all the respect. If they keep winning, then they're going to keep moving up. Number 6, the Atlanta Falcons. That is actually a 3-point drop. They did win their game, but it was a lot closer than one would have expected against a Bears team that I don't think should be very good. I'm going to say that they seemed more rusty than, taking a step back. Sarkisian's first real game play calling, he definitely was catching some flack for people not thinking that he did a great job with that. So, if that pattern continues, they might have a problem. If it was more kind of like, okay, I'll learn from my mistakes and he calls a little bit better offensive game next time, then I'm not too worried about the Falcons. Number 5, the Oakland Raiders. This is actually where I had them last week as well. They won their game against the Titans. I think the Titans will be a pretty good team, so that's definitely a plus for them. They looked overall pretty good. As I mentioned, the defense actually did a good job stymieing the Titans' offense. If that was for real and not as much the Titans just having a hard time getting it going, then the Raiders are going to be definitely a team to watch. They can get some defense to go with that strong offense. Number 4, the Dallas Cowboys. As I mentioned last week, they were my pick for the least likely to end the season where I had them ranked, because at that point, we did not know what was going to be going on with the Zeke Elliott stuff. Plus, I had them losing to the Giants. So, the win in and of itself did not move them up here nearly as much as the fact that it looks like Elliott is going to play the entire season. So I think that could be worth 2, maybe even 3 extra wins for them based on how I was picking the games before that. So that's a big deal. And I actually picked the Giants to beat them in week 1. So now they're, they have a better record than I expected at this point. They have their star running back. They have the division, tied for the division lead and a tiebreaker over the team that I had winning the division, the Giants. Now, albeit I had them winning the division when I thought Zeke was missing 6 games, but I did think that they were going to be the best team in the division if that was the case, and probably still the second best even without it. So Cowboys' chances for a deep playoff run, in my opinion, went up significantly this week. Number 3, the Green Bay Packers. That's up 3 points from last week. Obviously beating the team that I had, a top team that I had last week, the Seahawks, certainly helps them, even though it was at home. They were able to crack the stout Seahawk defense by the end of the game, even though they had fits with them early on. Rodgers had some pretty good numbers, though, again, a lot of those were late after the defense was a bit gassed, and I'm not going to say garbage time because the game was still close enough that there wasn't really a true garbage time, but he definitely put up big numbers once they actually got a decent lead. So I'll say I wasn't like super duper impressed with that, but the defense just destroyed the Seahawks. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with the Seahawks and them needing to fix some problems that they have on offense. But you can't take it. You gotta give Green Bay at least some credit for coming out and making all that. If nothing else, playing well enough to show that Seahawks have a lot of flaws. So moving on, number 2, the Steelers. This is where I had them last week. This is where I have them this week. They won their game against the Browns. It was not the dominating effort you would have expected from them. They actually had trouble with the Browns at the end of last season too. Now, granted, they rested pretty much everybody in that game, but they almost lost that game as well. I don't think the Browns, like, quote-unquote, have their number, but it is interesting that they have not played that great against them the last couple of times. But I still think overall they're the second most balanced team in the conference and probably overall in the NFL. They have a great offense and it should have an well above average defense. If that doesn't hold up, then they will move down. But right now, a mediocre performance but a win didn't move the needle really for me. And number 1, what will be controversial because almost every other list is going to move them down. The New England Patriots, 0-1, but had definitely some issues, especially on defense. That's where I'm going to be worried. If the defense isn't able to fix itself, then they are going to have some problems, and they could certainly move down. But right now, I still think that they are the favorites to win the Super Bowl. I would be surprised. Obviously 16-0 is not happening. I wouldn't be shocked at 15-1. I think that they are 14-2, 13-3 team. If they win less than 12 games, I would be shocked. And even that, I would say, would be pretty disappointing and surprising. But like I said, I'm not, one loss I'm not going to get too worried about, especially in week 1, and to a very good team. The Chiefs are a very good team. They were a very good team coming into that game. They played a great game. They deserve all the credit in the world for punching the champs in the mouth and coming away with a win on the road in a big game that not that many people thought they had a chance to win. But like I said, I still think the Pats are a better team than basically anyone. So we'll see what happens. But right now, they're still number 1 until there's enough evidence to show that they are not the Super Bowl favorites. All right. Thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and share the videos, and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media. Facebook and Twitter are both @MA Sports Central. Thanks, and we will see you soon.